The Marty and Laura Show is brought to you by Veterinary Village. With locations throughout Wisconsin, Veterinary Village is dedicated to enhancing the quality of animal and human lives today and into the future. Welcome to the Marty and Laura Show. How are you guys today? How you doing, Marty?
Doing great.
Excellent. And we have a special treat for you guys. We've brought a guest to talk to us. Lindsay Stanton is the author of Soul Revival. She's created an entire community about managing grief. And our last episode that we did on old dogs and kind of the idea of approaching the time when you have to say goodbye to your pet, it's really hard. And I promised not to cry again. And now we have Lindsay. And so I don't know. It may not work.
It's unlikely to
So,
work.
welcome, Lindsay. I am super, super excited to have you. Lindsay and I have known each other for a minute. And
I know, I was doing the math on it this morning. I think it's 20-ish years.
it's a minute. It is
Wow.
definitely a minute. So hard to imagine, but true.
I think we were both like 10.
Yeah, pretty much. Definitely 10. Lindsay, talk to us a little bit about just really what brought you to Soul Revival and how you apply that when you're talking to people that are grieving over the loss of their pets.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I know you know a lot about my personal story, but for those listening, my husband passed away in 2020, and he was my partner in everything, literally everything. And it was extremely difficult. I did not feel like the tools existed to help me navigate that process. And I 1000% believe that things happen for a reason. And I know for me, my personal why, although at the time it didn't seem like there could be a reason why, I do understand now that the reason is really to help other people pull together tools and modalities in a meaningful way that can actually make a difference versus a lot of the things that are available or not available to them now. And I felt very called early in my journey to do things that were more like trauma related. And at the end of the day, grief and trauma run down very parallel paths. And depending on the type of grief that you're experiencing, it can be extremely traumatic. And depending on the way the person or pet passed, it can be extremely traumatic. And you talked about last week, losing young dogs, and that in and of itself is a trauma. It's something we don't expect. And there is a total another layer to it, which you alluded to in last week's episode, that I think number one, we don't give enough credence to the importance of talking about grief and losing our animals. And we don't give enough reverence. And as a society, we just don't give enough tools for grief in general, no matter what your loss is. So that's really what called me early in my journey was, first and foremost, survival, because survival was a challenge. And honestly, I feel like you can have that experience when you lose an animal. I don't think it's not a downgrade. We shouldn't be like, I feel like we almost like downgrade as a society a loss of a pet versus a family member. And in some instances, our animals can very much be closer and more meaningful to our everyday experience than people in our family that we don't engage with regularly. So I would just set the stage with that. And I think that needs to be normalized.
Marty, what are you thinking?
Yeah, pretty much the same as we have clients that suffer great loss, dog, cat, whatever their friendly little pet is. And it can be a lot of things. I mean, for a kid, it can be a goldfish or a mouse. It doesn't have to be a dog to make it something that they're emotionally close to. But the problem is a lot of people who aren't pet owners or are not engaged pet owners, I've said for a long time there are dog people and there are people who have dogs. So if you're
Yeah.
really a dog person or really a cat person, you understand the gravity of that loss. And society oftentimes minimizes it by saying, well, it's just a dog. It's just a cat. And
Yeah,
that's really
100.
insensitive and it's really inappropriate because we need to help people. And for children especially, not that this is easy as an adult either, but for children especially, this may be the first loss that they experience. Before a grandparent or before a parent is lost, it may be a pet. And so unfortunately, this can be a learning experience for younger people to learn to navigate through how grief happens and the stages of grief and how to be kind to yourself because you are going through some of those things, because sometimes you expect more of yourself than you should be able to provide. So I think it's permission for people to learn how to grieve.
Yeah, 100%. So Lindsay, talk us through kind of some steps, some things that you have used, tools that you've created.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first and foremost, like we can just go into a deep state of overwhelm. And especially grief comes in layers. So if you've had loss of other pets or you've lost humans in your life, when you experience a new loss, that layers on top of your past grief and can bring up a lot of those traumas for you. So, what Marty was alluding to, like giving yourself grace, giving yourself space, and knowing that you get to pick the timeline. Nobody else gets to pick the timeline. And I think it's really important to set that stage for yourself. I had a client I was working with recently who lost her dog, who was hearing some of the things that you have both talked about from friends of hers around, like, oh, it's just a dog and all this and that. And that dog had got her through a lot of major events in her life and major traumas in her life. And that connection is always there. And I think giving yourself some tools to help you regulate your nervous system, because our nervous systems get totally thrown out of whack. And no matter what the grief is, that's what I work a lot on with my clients is tools to regulate, whether it's, motion, movement, whether it's, yoga, stretching, whether it's meditation. That's a huge one, even if it's for 5 minutes. You don't have to meditate for 20 minutes for it to be effective. Like 5 minutes,
Okay,
reset.
so Lindsay, talk to me because I think this is hard for a lot of people, and I'm sitting here in the middle as the not woo woo fruity art major person, right? Like,
Yeah.
talk to us about what meditation means and how you actually can actualize that, make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just like there's so many apps out there that it will help you. I mean, for people who have never meditated before, 5 minutes of a guided meditation will help you to shut out like the reoccurring thoughts that just are constantly running in your head. And it does open you up. I mean, at the end of the day, science and spirituality are aligned in the fact that we are all energy. And when we meditate, we open ourselves up to receive energy. And so, and that, I mean, the facts are there. Like when you are able to tap into an element of connection and get signs from your animal on the other side or your loved one, it hugely changes the grief process because it shifts your mindset from permanence to possibility, which is a night and day difference.
Mm, interesting. Marty, talk to us about some of your experiences in the clinic, right? Working with people and their pets that I know that you have stories on this.
And there are so many. I mean, there are days, not often, but there are days that we'll do 4 euthanasias with one doctor in a day. And that can be really challenging and overwhelming for pretty much anyone, no matter how experienced they are with this. So it's it's definitely a challenge for people to work through. And we see all levels of experience. We have clients that come in and they seem pretty matter of fact about it. They just want to drop off the pet and they're done. We see other people that want to come back and visit the pet after it's gone. We see a whole range of emotions. We see very quiet. We see very uh,
Lots of
loud, kind
crying.
of, yeah, and wailing and I understand all that. And all of us have a different way to deal with it. And a lot of people think that they are prepared for it. They're like, okay, I'm good, and they're really not. So I think that as veterinarians and veterinary staff, we identify and we recognize those emotions, and they can be all over the board. Some people want to stay for an extended period of time. Some people want to leave right away, and we need to respect every person's wishes. When my kids were young, my kids had dogs, and one of my children wanted to have the dog euthanized in the bedroom where the puppy was born. My son said, "I don't want to have the dog at the house. I want it to be at the clinic." Everyone has their own way of dealing with this. Some kids, and I try to talk the children through this, because I keep going back to kids, but I feel like parents don't always know how to deal with the grief that the children are having at the time, because they're so wrapped up in their own grief, that I have to kind of reach out to those children and help them to understand this is permanent, help them understand what it means, why we're doing what we're doing. I think it's really important that we support the kids. And one child in the family may do a completely different thing than the other. One might stay in the room, one might not want to stay in the room, one might want to come back, one might not. So I think we need to respect that every person, no matter how old they are, needs to have the freedom to say, this is what I need to do. I have two adult male friends who won't even go to their own family's funerals. They just can't. And so we're all different, and that needs to be respected and accepted. But as veterinary staff members, we try to help the kids, help the families, help support them. And we actually have a grief counselor that has a contact with every single client that loses a pet, euthanasia, or unexpectedly from some kind of a death. And she used to actually be a receptionist for me. Now she has a master's degree in mental health. And so she contacts all of those people. There are other organizations that can do that. And I think it's really important that if you are about to lose a pet or have lost a pet, that you know that there are resources out there, whether it's with Lindsay or with whoever. And one of the books that I've recently come across in the last 6 months is called Promises to My Pet, and I think it's a really important piece of a really important tool. It's a book that has lots of blank pages and lots of places to put pictures and notes, and to think through these things, so that as you are preparing to lose a pet, that you can try to do this as reasonably and logically as you can, knowing the emotional storm that's going to happen. But it gives us as veterinary staff the introduction to the client that this is going to happen and we need to help get you prepared. And it also helps, because some of my young doctors have a very difficult time saying, okay, it's almost time and you need to start getting ready for this. So it's a tool that we can use to introduce them to the eventuality. And all the time we have clients that say, I don't know what's going to happen if I ever lose her. And you say, well, you're going to lose her. I mean, odds are pretty good that she's not going to live as long as you do. And I don't want to sound insensitive or hardcore, but you're going to have to figure out the path that this looks like. And as a veterinarian, I feel like it's my responsibility to help you make that decision, and not just say, well, you're going to know. Like, that's not
Right.
support.
Right.
Support is, I will talk to you about quality of life, whether it's on the phone, whether it's on a Zoom call, whether it's in person. I want you to feel like and if you don't have a veterinarian that can help you with that, you need to find somebody that can, if you need assistance. Some people, they manage it fine on their own, but not everybody. And it is my responsibility and that of my doctors to say, okay, this is quality of life. This is what and everybody has their own definition of quality of life, but I can help you with some guidance and start looking at, is he eating? Is he drinking? Can he walk? Is he up and around? How many bad days versus good days are you having? Kind of give them some tools so that every person who has their own needs can use something that I say to them to help them. And I think that's very much what this book can do. The Promises to My Pet book by Claire Chu. And I think it's really important that they also probably have access to grief counseling before the loss of a pet,
Right.
so that they can prepare.
Well, and Lindsay, talk to us a little bit more, because it's a wonderful juxtaposition between you and Marty. I love this. Marty is very grounded in the permanent, and you bring to the conversation the idea of the possibility. So talk to us about some of what you've personally experienced or your clients personally experienced when you talk about signs and that sort of thing. Talk about some of the possibility piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, what's beautiful about this is actually the science is catching up, and we see it every day. But I personally lived it. And, I've built literally a full blown communication system with Roger, my husband, on the other side. And I get signs from him every day. The book I wrote is about that and being able to use tools to open up and, build types of communication. I mean, there's so much conversation going on about this right now. If you've got to like the telepathy tapes or anything. I mean, the science is catching up, but I have had lived experience with this. I've lost now
Right.
2 dogs way, way, way too young.
Yeah.
One 16 months and then one at 6, almost 7, and a lot of trauma related to especially Valor. The second one, just because it was very much similar to Roger's disease and passing. So lots of triggers there. And I would say I did a lot of Reiki with him throughout his illness, Valor. And that, I think, connected us. I do 1000% believe that our dogs are brought to us for a reason in the time in our life. I do believe that our animals are our soul. We have soul contracts with our animals. And I know that Valor came to me to help me heal with some of the wounds that I was going through from my grief experience with Roger. And I guess partially because of that, I felt so connected to him with the caregiving for him. And he had IVDD, for those who don't know. And he required pretty much 24/7 care, especially right after surgery. And so that made that loss even more difficult to navigate. And I asked him, because I had done Reiki with him and felt so connected with him, and I knew it was time to let him go. I asked him before I took him in to send me a sign. It was a very specific sign. I asked him for a flying monkey, and less than 24 hours afterwards, I received it through this crazy movie that my TV like literally started playing that I would never have watched on my own. And I dropped to my knees crying, but with happiness that he had delivered this to me. And I got so many signs from him afterwards, and dream visits with him. I've had this is what made me know this was possible. Is my first Spinoni was his name was Dante, and I had signs from him. I had a dream visit with him because I literally cried myself to sleep. And so I knew when Roger was sick, this is possible because I've already done this. If Dante can do it for me, I know Roger can do it for me. So yeah.
Right. And I don't in any way want to sound disrespectful of people who have beliefs. What I do want to make clear is that for children, that they understand the difference between sleeping and euthanasia or death, because a lot of kids hear the word put to sleep or the terms put to sleep or other terms that may be comparable to that, and then they don't understand the difference between actual sleep and the loss. And so
Yeah.
I want to be really clear with children that they don't think that they should never go to sleep, because then they're like staring at the ceiling all night thinking that if they fall asleep that they're going to die. So I think it's really important that we make that distinction for our children, for our young people, because that is a big deal for kids. And a lot of people don't think that young children really understand the loss. And I'll tell you that my daughter, when she was 4, had an experience with a pet that wasn't ours and had a very concrete understanding of the difference at age 4. And people will say, oh, they don't understand that until they're like 8 or 10. No, no, no. Young children understand this. And so you have to be respectful of everybody and how they perceive this. So I think it's really important that we distinguish those things and that we make sure that the kids have help. And there's some good books for children. I mean, there's a Mr. Rogers book, When a Pet Dies, and there's The 10th Good Thing About Barney. I mean, there's books that you can get at the library, you can get on interlibrary loan, you can buy on Amazon. So if you are in a position that you're about to lose that pet, don't just think about you. There's a book called The Last Walk. It's about loss of a pet. There's lots of really good materials out there, whether they're online or whether they're in printed form. But please give yourself the grace of preparing for this and preparing your family for this, because it's really important. If your kids are away at college, you have to be respectful. Do you need to come home before we do this?
Right.
Do we need to put you on a Zoom call during the
Right.
procedure? What can we do to support everybody in the family that they're not somehow left out of the decision or left out of the experience, because everybody has their own set of needs. Some people really need to see how concrete it is. Other people don't. So just, I keep coming back to that, but regardless of the age, from age 2 up, to 95, you have to have that respect that everyone makes those decisions together and that you all have to be aligned. And I have had parents say to me, well, I'm just going to tell him that he died here. No, no. Or I'm going to tell him he ran away. I'm like, no, we're going to be honest with your child. Because if you do that and then they find out later that you were disrespectful and lied to them about what happened, they will never again trust you for anything that you say. So there's such an emotional level of trust here that it has to be really clear that everybody is maybe they don't make the final decision, but they're all involved in understanding what's happening.
100%.
Yeah, that can add the trauma element to it too, if they feel like they've been
Right.
excluded and didn't get to things, the way that they needed them.
Doggett simplifies the puppy buying journey by connecting families with the perfect breed and responsible, health-verified breeders. They are the only breeder marketplace that verifies health clearances and responsible breeding practices. Through their personalized puppy matcher tool and matchmaker services, they educate and guide buyers every step of the way, ensuring a seamless process and a perfect match for their lifestyle. From initial breed consultation to introductions with top breeders, Doggett makes responsible puppy ownership easy and stress-free.
Lindsay, I've got one for you. Talk to us a little bit from your experience of your conversations with your pets. Tell us some of that story.
I mean, the biggest way I've communicated is through Reiki, because that's
Okay.
kind of how I intuitively tap in. And with
Mhm.
Valor, I actually said to him, so he was, for those who aren't familiar with IBDD, it can lead to self-harming, and he was self-harming really bad. And I had had multiple episodes with him, and I said to him, okay, if this happens one more time, I know you're telling me like you're in pain and you need to go. And he did, and it was like the perfect scenario for him not to too. Like, I was home, like there was no reason, there was no other trigger, so it was a clear yes to me that his physical body, very much like Roger's, was failing him, and it was time to release him from that failing body. And so I do feel like, whether it's doing Reiki or just being silent with our pets and just feeling into their energy, I do feel like they let us know. And I think anybody who's been a long-term animal lover and, have them in your house, they do energetically tell you. I mean, I remember long before any of these experiences I've talked about now, like Diana, told me, like, when it was time for Dante to pass, like, he will let you know, and he 1000% did. And so I think the closer we can be to our animals and listening to them and being in tune with them, and oftentimes that's just being silent with them and just spending time with them in silence, we can tune into their energy, and we can feel what they need. So I knew Valor needed to be released.
Right.
Well, and in my experience, what I tell a lot of clients is, I will help you make the decision, but you will walk into the house someday, you will get out of bed some morning, and you will look at them, and they will look back at you with a look that says, I can't do this anymore. And if you are really in tune with that, I mean, it's going to hit you, and it's going to hit you in the gut, but you have to listen to that. And that's where this Promises to My Pet book gives you the option of starting to think this through, going through, what would my pet want? What would their quality of life, if they could tell me, what do I think their quality of life desires would be? And so I think you're absolutely right, is you need to be in tune with them. But it can't just be this structured, this box of this is exactly what it's going to look like. It's going to look different for every pet. because every disease condition is different. We see, I'm going to kind of explain, I hope this doesn't get too weird, but I'm going to kind of explain that there are different trajectories of disease. There are trajectories like parvovirus. When they're a puppy, they're fine, and then they get really sick really fast, and then they can get better. It's a really sudden drop off, but with a recovery. There are things with slow senility declines that you see these very slow trends downward. You can see trends where they drop off suddenly. So you have to kind of look at that trajectory and say, is this happening really fast? And then you need to look at your veterinarian or your veterinary staff and say, okay, this is what you found. Is there a good disease and a bad disease that this could be, or are they all bad diseases? If I see fluid in the chest, there is no good disease that makes you have fluid in your chest. Do you need to have a CT or an MRI for me to tell you that this is terminal?
Right.
Probably not. But there are other things where I'm going to look at a pet and say, well, it could be this, or it could be this. And if it's this, it's got a good prognosis. And I'm going to ride this out with you until we figure out which disease you have and what the prognosis looks like. But if everything is in the category of it's all bad, I'm going to tell you it's more likely I'm going to stop you from spending an unfortunate amount of money that you later may regret. And I don't ever want to stop somebody from doing diagnostics. But if we think your dog has a brain tumor, there's probably not a good outcome. If we think your dog has a chest full of fluid, it's probably not a good outcome.
A burst
So ask your
hemangio.
veterinary.
I mean,
Yeah. So ask your veterinary team, what does the trajectory look like? What does the prognosis look like? Help me understand, because I can't, and there are times I'll just be like, there's just nothing. Like, there's nothing. We need to help your pet go. I'll keep them comfortable for the next day or two while you deal with this. I'll help you with this. And those are all questions that you can ask your vet is, can you help me? Is there something we can do that's palliative care to make them more comfortable while I prepare myself or the rest of my family for this? Or is this, if a dog can't breathe when they walk through my door and the only choice I have is to put a tube in their trachea and get them to an emergency clinic and they're never going to be extubated, why am I going to send you an hour down the road in a crisis? I'm not going to do that. So you really have to understand what all those things are. And sometimes you have to be really straight with your veterinary clinic because they may not want to tell you, okay, there's no hope. And if you say that to them, that helps them to understand where you're coming from. And you need to meet, especially if you're going to an emergency clinic or someplace that you're not familiar with the staff and the doctors. Every time you walk in the door of the ER, it's scary. You're not there if there's something good going on. So it's scary. It's going to be bad. It's going to be expensive. And you don't know the people and they don't know you. So they don't know how you think. They don't know what your expectations are. You don't know how they think and what their skills are. And you need to find some way really quickly to meet in the middle if you're on a critical decision-making situation. And I have clients that call me from the ER and they're like, okay, this is what's going on. I'm like, okay, here we go. So try to have a great relationship with your veterinary team. And I say this every week that we talk, but please try to have a great relationship with your veterinary team, somebody on the veterinary team that can guide you through decision-making and through the process, so that even if they're not in the office that day or it's the middle of the night or whatever, that you feel like you've got some support. And not every vet is going to be available after hours. Most of them aren't, but try to have a safety net. Try to build that for yourself. Even if your dog is 1.5 years old, try to build that for yourself.
And that's a really good segue actually to the thing I wanted to talk to Lindsay about, which is you have the Soul Revival book, but you've also built a community. And so what Marty's talking about, the safety net, talk to us about this community, because to me, having someone to talk to, whether it's your veterinarian, whether it's someone in your community, whether it's a friend, whether it's whoever it is, that makes all the difference.
100%. And people that get it, right? So you're not inviting in those comments that we talked about at the beginning of the episode.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, this is like it is 100% a heart-centered, safe space for people to have real conversations about what they're navigating, and it's, I mean, like you guys talked about in last week's episode, it's all over the board. And, the your emotions go all over the board when you're going through grief, and that's actually normal, you know? And so having a space where you can talk to other people that just totally understand it, there's no judgment. I mean, that is really what the community I built is all about. And I would just piggyback what Marty said too, I have a real partnership with my vet here, and he is completely open to everything. He has witnessed, like, there were times when they told me, I can't tell you, probably 4 different times they told me they were going to have to amputate Valor's leg, which was I mean, that I would have had to let him go. Like, there's not.
It was a dandy Denmont Terrier. So
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
his like
They
back.
don't do well on 3.
No, and his back end wasn't functioning. His whole back was gone. So there was like, that would have been a death sentence for him. And I can't tell you. I mean, it would probably happen 3 or 4 times that we came in after an emergency with him on a Thursday, and they told me, okay, let's see how he is over the weekend. He would say to me, my vet would say to me, do whatever you've got to do. I would do Reiki with him all weekend. And then Monday morning we come in and he would say to me, I don't understand it, Lindsay, but there's live viable tissue here where there was none on Thursday. So, I mean, they're like, being a partner with your vet, like they are open to these things too. I mean, they witness, I'm sure Marty, you can attest to this. They witness so many things with animals, and I mean, miracles can happen. And, you know, I mean, whether it's once they pass or prior to them passing, I believe that the timing of when they're in our lives is for a reason, and there's an intentionality behind it, and they come here to help us in many ways to heal and grow.
Absolutely. So yes,
100%.
there are miracles, and I'm happy to be wrong. I love walking into the exam room and saying, you know, I totally was wrong, and I'm glad I supported you. But there are times that it just has to happen, and there's very clear guidelines on that. So you need to talk to your veterinarian about, are there middle ground options? Is there, we can spend $25,000, we can spend $25, or is there something in the middle? And sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. I had a cat in yesterday that there were 2 choices: treat or euthanize. There just wasn't anything else in the middle, and I hate that. But as we've talked about on a previous episode, the cat had a urinary obstruction, and there's only one way to fix that, other than letting the cat go, and she wasn't ready for that. So we figured out the finances, and you do need to figure that out. So plan ahead, have a care credit card, or vet billing, or whoever you want to use, scratch pay, whoever. Insurance. So have a program in place that will give you the ability to, and then set your own limits. If you say $5,000 is as much as I can do, then $5,000 is as much as you should do. I had a dog not long ago that they spent $25,000 on for one episode, and her prognosis was great and she's doing super. So it was worth it, but not everybody has $25,000 without putting themselves forever in financial ruin. So have some strategies in place, have some things in mind, but have that finances that you can manage these things, or understand, if you can't, that you can't beat yourself up for it. If that's all you can do, then that's all you can do. And that's not a terrible thing. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be a pet owner. It doesn't mean you shouldn't own a pet again. And there are people who are judgmental enough to say, well, if you couldn't afford it, no.
And that's
If
actually
I were homeless,
right.
if I were homeless on the street, I would have a dog, man. There's no way I'd live out there without a dog. So please do not let other people's judgment cloud your ability to make good decisions.
And that was actually another great segue. See, this is Marty and I. It's all about it. Lindsay, talking about, because this is where I have encountered, not so much for myself, but I've encountered it in other people that make a decision that's the right decision for the dog and the right decision for them, and the guilt. Guilt of not being able to spend $25,000, and am I a bad person? Talk us through some of your suggestions and techniques for that, because honestly, personally, I feel like guilt is one of the biggest triggers and traumas around euthanizing a dog.
1,000%. And no matter what we do, what we spend, what lengths we go, that's just part of the grief process is guilt and rumination, like what if, woulda, coulda, shouldas. And I think that's where honestly, like the nervous system regulation techniques can be so important. And, you know, feeling those types of feelings is totally normal, but we are actually only meant to feel an emotion for a 90-second window. And so once you start to go beyond that and you're like really going deep into the rabbit hole, that's when you need to have some tools in your toolbox to like stop yourself, whether it's doing, you know, quick breath work or going on a walk around the block. And don't set the expectation of having to think like amazing thoughts, like just one step above, right? Just one step above the thought that you're thinking really makes a huge difference to help you climb out of it. But I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, no matter what, even with like signs, communication with your animal, I mean, you know, you still feel the feels, like you still feel, what if I'd done this? What if I'd done that? I mean, that's just grief. So the best thing you can do is give yourself the tools ahead of time to process it and, you know, give yourself tools to regulate, because this stuff does totally throw our nervous system out of whack, and that affects your emotional state. It affects your physical body. So, you know, like I said, you know, whether it's breath work, doing some movement practices, doing a meditation to just quiet your brain down from all the negative self-talk, those are things that you can do that take 5 minutes that shift you completely.
Negative self-talk. I'll own that one.
Yeah, it's all about being human, right?
Oh my God. It's for real. All right, you guys. Thank you very much, Lindsay. Thank you, Marty. We really appreciate talking about a really hard topic. I am not bawling. Miracles will never cease. It's a miracle.
Right. And remember, you can come back and listen to this again when you find yourself in the situation. So bookmark this, because at some point, if you have multiple pets, a pet, you're going to lose that pet, and you may need this as a resource to go back and say, what tools do I have? What books do I have? How do I get a hold of people? What do I do? So use this as a resource. Share this with your friends that need the support, because you're going to come across somebody sooner than you think. You're going to be like, oh no, everybody's good. And then you're not. So have this resource, because you really need this. There's a book called When Your Dog Has Cancer, Making the Right Decision. I mean, there's some really good resources.
We're going to have Lindsay's information. We're going to have a bunch of resources in the show notes.
Yeah.
So everybody can share that on. Lindsay, you will make sure that I have a way to connect with your community for people so that they have that resource.
Is that a Facebook community, or what is the structure of that community?
No, it's a video-based community. So there's preloaded teaching and resources, modalities for them to access, self-paced, and then we do live programs so that they can help each other. There's subgroups for different types of grief, pets, you know, parents, kids, if you love a child like it. So it's nice because everybody can help each other with the specific type of losses that they've had.
Right. And you know, there's always all the comments on Facebook back and forth. And so just be careful who you rely on, because some of the Facebook groups can be wonderful and some of the Facebook groups can be not so wonderful. So protect yourself from the not so wonderful ones.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Thank you, ladies. I appreciate you. Have a lovely Sunday. And we'll catch you guys next week.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining us on the Marty and Laura Show. We're excited to bring you these unique, fun, fact-based conversations about pet health. We hope you'll join us on social. Stop by the website to sign up for an extra tip of the week for your pet. While you're at it, do us a favor, please, and leave a review wherever you find your podcasts. The Marty and Laura Show is produced by Pure Dog Talk, Inc., sound design and editing by Premium Audio Services.